I'll just turn my microphone up a touch. Okay, cool. Good morning, everybody. So, as I was saying, this is two separate objects, and the way that I make this turn into a mask is that on the underneath layer, I'm coming to this track mat, and I'm saying that the track mat is the alpha value of shape layer 1, or it is the alpha inverted of shape layer 1. So if I choose that, we see that the shape now acts like a cutout on top, or a piece of paper with a hole cut in, and I can see the world through it. Now, the advantage of this over the previous is that I can still be in the shape layer, and the shape layer itself, we didn't really go a lot into shape layers in the first course, but with that selected, bless you, Christian, if I draw again, and I'm going to go over here, if I open up my shape layer, inside the contents container, I can hold two shapes. So it can be like a supergroup, and there are times when that's an advantage, and there are times when that's a disadvantage. But in this case, it's an advantage, because when you create a alpha mask track mat, it's only the layer that's directly on top. You can't say these 5 or 6 layers on top of my composition. That doesn't work. So now that I have these two things in one, if I open them both up and I look at the transform, so there's each one has its own little transform behavior. So that means that if I turn on the position animation for both of them, and now I'm just going to select this shape by itself, and let's say in a second's time I'm going to move its X value that way, and on the next one I'm going to get its, let's not go there, let's go X value that way. Now, those of us that have been, watching, I've put my keyframes around the wrong way, right? I've gone from end to beginning. But I select my layer and I press the U key, so I can only see those keyframes and not the meter or so of data. I can just get these two keyframes here and shift things out and select that. In fact, having a little bit, hang on, I see I'm looking at the minute scale and not the second scale. Let's zoom out, and I'll start there. I'll move these two keyframes so that we've got a little bit, a lot less time. Let's trim preview area. What's the shortcut for that? End for end. That's right. And so now, okay, that's still pretty flabby, but you can see that the tension. It's like a detective novel. We're only slowly finding out what's happening. Let's zoom in on our time a bit more. So you can see I'm grabbing that top bar, and so now I can really see my time scale from 6 seconds to 12. That's a 6-second animation. You can say so much. So I'm gonna drag that down to less than a 1 second animation. Okay, that's better. But before we just refresh ourselves on this, and we're going to talk work. I want you to really get a good understanding of how we master our motion. I have been doing some reading on motion graphics, and there's all those top 5 tips, top this, top that, plugins, tools, people, sites, but I haven't been looking at them for any particular thing. I've been looking at them for what's the common pattern, and the common pattern is this, is that if you're trying to show yourself as with a good appreciation of motion design, and you'd like to think about this as part of my job set in the future, thinking about what do I do when I graduate after I've had that sleep in I probably deserve, is that this linear type of motion is a sign of someone who doesn't care about practice. So things just moving, that doesn't reflect the real world. If we think about, if I could throw this high enough in the air, we would see it would take off really, really quickly, and then for a minute gravity would not apply, and then it would fall faster and faster. These are the laws of physics, and it's the laws of physics and the relationship of emotions that makes things connect to people, because that is the emotional, physical world we live in. It doesn't matter if it's a talking avocado. It doesn't matter if it's a brick having a cry that it's just broken its pet egg. It can be strange and unusual. It can be just a word or a logo, but it has to feel like it moves in the world. So we know, what's the way that we get things to easily speed up and slow down?
F9.
Yes, correct. Easing, which is affected by the F9 button. But that's just, that's the point. Just pressing F9, that's a good place to start. And I'll show you guys what I mean. But we have a better tool. So obviously, if I come here and I press the F9 key, you can see that my keyframes have turned into those little black widow things. Well, the blue widow things. Either way, there's something going on. But what we should do is this. I mean, we could do this. Right mouse click, go to Keyframe Assistant, and choose Ease, and you see there's the shortcut shown to you. However, what I did with the crack example is I got this little button here. Can you guys see that? Alex, can you see that down at the back? Yeah, that's why, not today, I'm not telling you what to do, but it's going to be good to be close to the screen. And of course, the glossy white surface is not our friend. If only the Institute knew about this thing called user experience. But this little button here and this little button here, if you could have a touch screen wall, is, if I turn that on, if I turn those on, and now I come to the equal button there, the thing called the graph editor. And maybe I'll just turn one off at the moment. So I see this little wee building. What does that mean? It means, and here I'm looking exactly at the speed graph. This time we focus on the speed graph. Before we kind of looked at the value graph, but now we're going to look at the speed graph. And what it's telling me is this. There's no speed. There's no speed. There's no speed. Suddenly I'm traveling at this speed. And then I've stopped. And there's no speed. So it's not following the laws of physics. To work with the tool is counterintuitive. Welcome to Adobe products, everybody. And that if I want it to appear to move slow at the beginning to speed up, so a car at traffic lights, yeah, I get this and I pull it down, and it kind of feels like I might be changing my keyframe. The only way I'm changing my keyframe is that if I move these things around, so I'm actually retiming there. So instead of grabbing this and that and dragging it around, we can do the same thing. So this is telling me I'm traveling along. Maths class was important, and I'm suddenly going at full speed, and then I'm sort of slowing down right at the very end. Well, I want the opposite of that. So that means instead of my curve going that way, my curve has to come this way. And the way that we do that is that we grab that little wee handle and I pull it, and okay, I've got this weird sort of bump taking place. It's just, okay, come on computer. Wakey wakey. If I get this handle here and I make that right back to that yellow block, you can see now I'm hardly using any speed, and it's just this massive amount of acceleration. So now I can pull that back a bit. Let's just do that. Okay, let's think about it that way. So now when I play this through, I'm going to, I can't make one sub-layer visible and the other one invisible. But if we see how that W kind of snaps in, that's working nicely. I'm going to apply that to the other one as well. So again, doing it quickly now. I pull it down, I stretch out a handle, I get rid of that end influence, I might stretch out the handle a little bit more. So now when I play it back, you know, it goes zip, as Ben might say. However, if I want it to accelerate in, reach a point and then accelerate out, the way that throwing the thing in space works, I'm just doing the same kind of thing on the other side. So I get this and I pull it down and I pull it out, and then suddenly I get my sense of acceleration and deacceleration. And you're saying to yourself, yes, but that's exactly the same as pressing the F9 key. It isn't, in that I can say how much acceleration in, how much acceleration out, so I can put a bias on it. And I could say that even if I now think about stretching out my time, I can set my motion which way or what. So let's just apply that to the next one. If your graph is really, really little or really, really big, you just need to click on this button here, and it makes things fit exactly to your viewport. So I'll pull that over there, and I'm going to shrink these back. Okay, that's a nice looking shape. What have I done? The question I ask myself every day: why did you do that? Okay, let's give it a bit more time. And it's got a feeling to it. So the next thing is just to think about moving things this way and that. Okay, do you guys want to bit of time with that. So if we come to, no, yes. I've done the same thing here, but I've used a mask. That's the only thing. I haven't used track mats because it's not like the mat's coming in to show something. I've got my text. Can I have another word, please?
Text.
Next.
Text.
Oh, text. So I do this. This is the simple way that you fracture something. How many pieces am I going to break it into? 3's better than 10. Yeah, I could do it. Yeah, like kind of shape copying. Do you mean? I could, or I could actually do it in Illustrator. One more time. No, I wouldn't use an adjustment layer. But yes, you use that for the shatter effect. So 3 pieces. Tricky. What I'm going to do is, if I just say that it's going to go this way to begin with, if I get that and I duplicate it, I'm going to hide that layer because I can see what this is doing, and I could either now draw another mask, or if I open up and I look at that mask, because I want to keep those 2 points, right? You know, I want everything to match up nicely. So I could now get this point and I hold down Shift and I get that point, and I'm going to think about how, let's get that there and let's go there. And you know, let's really be tricky because this is advanced motion graphics. I've added in another point. I just did that with the pen tool, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to duplicate this layer. Yeah, so if I wanted 10 pieces, I've got 10 layers. And so now let's get that one over there and this one over here. If I bring all my layers back, nobody knows until I get my text. Let's remember, if you select all your layers and go for one of your transform shortcuts, what's the transform for rotation? Yeah, what's the transform for P?
Position.
Yes, thank you. My head's on backwards, but I'm Irish and I'm allowed to be like that. S for scale, T for transparency. So let's say there's all my, so I can get that. I can, oh, you piece of thing.
You've done a mask on one the text that I want, and duplicated that, and then just moved the mask on.
Yeah.
Duplicate.
Yeah. There we go. So there's my thing into 3 pieces. So I'll turn on Google. No, that's not my responsibility. I'll turn on Moodle. But let's just come here. Choose one of those words. Snap, crack, break, smash. They all infer a certain number of pieces. So get yourself going, ask me some questions, and we'll spend, let's say, 10-15 minutes on this. We don't have to finish it in that time. We just need to get started and loosen up our motion brain, get that working, and then after that, we'll think about what this kind of means if we're thinking about our second project. And I'll show the brief for the first project as well by the end of the class, I promise. I'll just I'll just stop this recording just to save my hard drive from imploding. Actually, I can just pause. So if we go back, and not this example, but this example, we've been looking at the effect. Crack cracks. Of course crack cracks, that's what cracking does. But what's the cause of your situation? So, for example, what George has been working on, it's, what's your word again, George? Break. And Felix is doing the same. We all have these great words. How does break? What happens? Is it into each other? Well, it can't, because it's just a word.
External force.
Yeah, exactly. There's an external force. Who makes that external force? We do. So if we see what mine is doing with both my position values, mine's creeping forward, right? There. Okay, and the way that I'm doing it is I'm cheating. I'm using scale, so it's getting bigger, bigger, bigger. But if we think about storytelling, and it doesn't matter what story we're telling, so that means information, that means branding, that means animation, that means wayfinding. It's all narrative, and often the narrative is just data. But with storytelling, and in this aspect, am I really animating, if we just think about scale, am I really animating the meaning of the word crack? Or should it really be the word pop? Because it feels like it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, of course, the balloon makes the loud banging noise. So I'm going to take that animation out. And here's a way that in your self-directed learning for this week, that's your next step, is Andrew's kind of there because his word snap is snapping to itself, like an Adobe product or like modeling in CAD or something. But if we think about break, and I can use crack as well, I want to put an emotion that makes the meaning true. Now, if I've already got my animation happening, what would I think about doing and trying to get all of these layers to do something as a group? What's my workflow here? What's my pipeline? How do I get everything into one group? Pre-compose. So that means that I have something happening here that I'm happy with. So I'm going to get all these layers, except the background layer. Nice red gradient. And I'm coming up to layer, and I'm choosing pre-compose. And I'm going to say, this is my crack word motion. Trying to not use the word animation because I don't need to feel like, oh, he's just teaching us animation. Not that you guys have that voice. And I click on OK. So now I have crack word motion. Somewhere along here, it actually does break, right? If I double click on it, I get to go inside the container because it's just like putting your your phone in your pocket. This is object. A lot like it, yes. Pocket is composition. I can get pocket and put it in a car. So if somebody wants to get the phone out of my pocket, they just need to open the car, put their hand in my pocket, and the thing's theirs. Luckily, burglars can't just double click on us and get our stuff. Here, we can double click and get to the thing inside the thing inside. What I'm going to do is that I could, at exactly the right moment, create a marker, but I don't really need to, because I know I'm only reminding you things from a few weeks ago, but my playhead keeps locked to the outer layer. Now here's something I haven't been showing yet. I'll just get rid of, yes, I know I'm teaching motion graphics. If I press the tab key on my keyboard, look what happens. I get this little wee box pop open, and this is a flow chart of this composition here is inside this composition called comp1. So to get to the parent, or to get from the next container out, the next skin of the onion, I just need to click on that, and the timeline is still locked to the same place. Now, something that I showed a few people every now and again is that you might actually want to put a marker here, because remembering exactly 2 seconds in 24 frames is, that's some mental arithmetic. Sometimes I write things down on a piece of paper, but I can create a marker here. And the way that we create markers in After Effects is that you hold the Shift key and you press a number. So if I go Shift 1, there, you see I've got marker number 1 on my timeline. So I can have 10 markers, because 0 is a number. Thank you to, some very clever thinking from the Middle Ages, from our Islamic world. So if I go somewhere else and I press the number 1 now, I snap to that marker. So I could have some other place in my motion where I need to either show a client or talk to a tutor, or the next big thing I need to think about, or the general timing, or if I'm working to a voiceover, or I'm working to music. So this is when the music goes whoosh, and I've got to have something happen. If I press button 1, I snap to there. If I press button 2, so it's a really fast way to get about your timeline. Okay, so before point number 1, just to finish this off, I want to have a keyframe here. So I'm going to get, in this case, maybe, well, I'm going to use scale again. So I'm going to set a scale point there, but on here at the very beginning, I'm going to get the scale, and let's make sure, switches and modes, I'm using, thank you operating system. There's a little wee button here, toggle switches and modes, and you can see that previously I was just in how am I setting my track map, what I was saying only an hour ago. If I click on it now, I get the view of my switches, and these switches do some really great things, but you can see here, now that I've zoomed this up, it's kind of like a hairy old piece of wood or something. As soon as I click on this, what should happen is that it gets nice and crisp. And this feature, you may recall, is the feature called constantly rasterized, which means if you've got vector information, doesn't work for bitmaps, so JPEGs, etc., but if you've got vector information, it always redraws it very, very crisply. So that means now I'm going to go up to about 8,500%, and I set a keyframe, and it's going to go zzz. And so what I'm trying to do is imagine it's my phone and I'm holding it above the concrete and I let it drop. So I'm bringing motion to the meaning in two ways. First, the way the thing acts to the definition of the word, and then to the situation that creates the realization of that. So if it's smash, instead of it just going bang, what's it going to do? Is it going to fall on something in smash? Is it just going to hit the bottom of the screen? Is smash going to whack into a wall? Make sense? So what you're doing down there, Alex, you know, you could imagine, you see how yours is doing that, you know, like you're breaking a chicken bone or something. You could open your scene up with just a white triangle, and you notice that I'm using color. Don't be afraid, guys. You're allowed to use color. I know with the black box exercise, what was the first rule?
The back.
Yeah, the box must be black. We don't have that now. So, Alex, for you could have a blank screen. You could have a triangle go zoop, and then you could have break just come, so that there is that real sense of communication, that these things are more than just flabby old pixels drifting around the screen, that we're actually building meaning. We're building a good relationship, because once you can do that, you've got people's attention. And that's what our job is, no matter what we're doing.
Wait, so you're talking about the setup?
The setup.
Also very important.
Yeah.
That triangle that you're talking about.
Well, you can't tell a punchline without a joke, right? So the setup is almost more important.
Because it actually makes the person think about it.
Yeah, that's right. That's the rules of engagement, and this is what design research is all about. It's about understanding how to generate the setup, how to cue people. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like an evil professor here, but it's, you know, we've got to know people to work with people, and once we know how people work, well, then we know how to engage them. And these words we've had with us no matter what language we grew up speaking our entire life. Oh, that's cracked. Don't snap that, or whatever. So let's see this play through properly. Hang on, before I do, what would be the next thing I do for this? Somebody say speed graph? Yeah, that's right, the speed graph. Because I've got 4 seconds, 3 seconds of animation here. So I want to get that turned on, that's great. And what I'm going to do is I will I'm going to tuck that right. Will that do it for me? That looks potentially interesting. Okay, I see what I need to do. I'm going to pull that all the way, and then, yeah, that looks better. That's a nice looking curve. Okay, fingers crossed. Well, kind of, but my transition from first keyframe to second keyframe is way too slow. So that means I'm going to maybe turn that off, and I will just close that up. So taking a second and a half off that. Faster again. Yeah, starting to feel good now. So let's do what feels like to be too fast. And there it is. And then finally, before I let you have a break, because I think it'd be good if we could open some windows, but we can't. We'll take the roof off. Is that now I'm going to get, what was I going to do? Yes. The other things I haven't been talking about. I've got some little chips and shards. So these, if I just, and remember our shortcut for showing everything that's animated is pressing the U key, because there is no U in animation. That makes no sense. But if I zoom up, we'll see that with shape layer, I'll go to shape layer 1 actually. There, you can see that I have movement and rotation. So to make another little chip, just so that you can see what happens, because you know there's always primary, secondary, tertiary in most things. Primary research, secondary research, tertiary research. Tertiary research is usually, oh, now that I've made it, now that I've delivered it, now that it's happened, I understand this. Tertiary for us would be, you know, maybe that little bit would crack as well, so that my cracks crack. But instead, I'm not going to go to that level of fussing around, but to add another little bit, and maybe it's going to be a little bit just out there, because we've all smashed a plate, right? Or we've all seen our screen crack somehow. If I get the pen tool, thank you brain, and I'm going to think first of all, I'm moving to that point in time. So again, it would be great if I had a marker. I'm actually not. I'm going to go and let's zoom up on that. So as you can see, it's just going to be a little bit, but the small details are important. I'm going to get that now, and you see that no matter where I am in my timeline and wherever I draw something, I always get a full length layer for a drawing object. It goes all the way along. So the shortcut for trimming something, saying that I don't want it to appear in time until this point, is that I use Option, let's select the layer, Option and square bracket, and it trims it out for me. Or I could, in reality, just get that edge and drag it along. Shortcuts are cool, makes it 20% more efficient instantly. I've done that, and now I'm doing that process of working backwards. So this is, I want it to be at that point at around this time. So I've still got a little bit of motion happening, and so therefore I press P for position, and I'm going to maybe going to move it about there, and you'll see why in a sec. It should kind of shoot out as a vector, but I'm trying to put something else into it. I click on position. Well, that makes sense. I'm going to come back into time now and say that around about here, the position of this object should now be there. And hello, what's going on? Why are my points over there? What mistake did I make? That's right. So for those of us that are new to drawing shapes, whenever you draw a shape in Photoshop, After Effects, it makes the center point of that object the center of the screen. You want to make that center point the center of the object itself, its pivot or anchor point. To do that, don't worry, Alex, I will stop talking soon. If I hold down the Option key and I double click on pan behind, you'll see, no point me pointing at my screen, you'll see in our little wee triangle a circle will appear on it, and there it is. So there's the center of my object, and that means that's where my motion path will come from. So once again, I add a position keyframe. I'm going back to when things were good, when we were still in love, and I'm dragging that object over there, and so now that bit comes out. But if you have a look at the logic of my movement, it's behaving like a ghost. It's passing through another object. What I was saying before, the world of physics and the world of emotions. So in other words, science and art brought together. That means I need to get my motion path and I need to bend it. Whenever we have a motion path, and we always have one if we have more than 2 keyframes of spatial movement through space, so you don't get a motion path for transparency. You might get a motion path with scale, but really not so much, just because.
You don't want for rotation?
No. So really it's only position. Let's just say that. If I get this dot here, it's actually a handle. So all of our motion paths are curves, the Bezier curves. So that means, you see that dot there? That's the outward handle. So if I decide to move things better, so that means now we can see that it's sliding out. Apparently everything moves in a curve. I don't know about lasers though. I think they move in a straight line. And then the last thing that I'm going to add to this, what Christian just said, is I'm going to stack in a little bit of rotation. So turning on the clock there, coming back and making a keyframe. So I'm clicking on the hollow diamond, and that means by the time I get from there to there, I want it to have twisted a little bit. So now, beginning, B for beginning, N for end, deselect my object, does a bit, there's probably too much curve. Maybe even counter rotation. Let's zoom out 100% and look at the whole thing. How does it come together? That's okay. What if I staggered the timeout a little bit though? Not right, but it has potential. And maybe a bit faster, and actually let's take that rotation right out. And we might have to straighten up that curve a bit too. So it's always, yeah, the idea is good, but no, yes. Simple isn't easy. All right, that's 10:35. I'll pause the recording one more time. And how much time do you guys want as a break? Okay, so you need 15 minutes. Are we all good with 15 minutes? What I want you to do now is just save what you have. But remember, when you save, choose Save As, and wherever you know, if you're going to save to the Documents folder, if you're going to save to the desktop, please make sure that you create. So I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it DACA 7323. That's our course number. Motion graphics. Yes, I'm talking about filing, I know. And inside there, I'm creating a new folder called Week 1. Because if we think about the brief, we had for the last class, it was the 30% was a hand-in of weekly exercises. So it's going to be the same model for this, in that we learn technology and techniques, and then we apply those techniques creatively. So today's a bit of a reminder. So that, and I'm just going to call it Week 1 class. You don't need to submit every week, and I'll go through the brief at the end of the class. But when it comes to formative assessment, you will be handing in what you've done every week and what you've, how you've improved it during the week or the weekend or Friday afternoon or what have you. I've just bought a new PC. I think I was purchasing it, building it during COVID, and if anyone is just at the corner of thinking, am I going to buy a new machine sooner or later? I'd probably more later because everybody's broke. I'd definitely buy a PC and not a Mac. Yeah, I know. And no, buy a PlayStation for gaming. That's like trying to treat your bed as your office. Things for certain purposes. PlayStation's for gaming, it won't get viruses, you can't do anything else, you have to be sitting on the couch going, oh my god, I should be doing my work, yeah, that's right, yeah, trying to do your typing on the washing machine. Let's save that. Okay, so now that our work's saved, in case something crashes, you've got a little bit of recourse to not losing everything. I want you to go up, please, to this little search thing, which is also a calculator and a dictionary if you ever need to check the spelling of a word. And I want you to type in Cinema 4D, because only Cynthia's going to have the right answer, and all you need to do now is click on OK and your license. Yep, so once you've found it, double click on it, please. Yes, it is, but it's motion graphics animation. It's not. Alright, so what's going to happen is you're going to get a white square, and it's going to be asking you for your license. Now, you don't have a license unless you have a license. Have you got a license, Andrew? Yeah. Okay, so if you know the login and password, that'll work. But we also have a corporate license, and I'd like us to use that. So if you can click on the second button that says License Server at the top. So, yep. Now you're on. It would be better if you were on this machine.
So are we learning 21?
21.
Is there a huge difference between 22?
There's this thing called forces, and we might be dealing with forces,
So
which
it doesn't exist in 20.
doesn't exist in 20.
I got a license for 20. I
Okay.
don't have a license for 21. Okay.
Okay. So you're typing into the IP field 172.20.12.19. 172. Don't listen to me. 172.20.12.19.
Just into seven.
Yep, and then click on OK. Alright, yep, there we go. And it just takes a little minute because it's going all the way to Germany, then to Unitech, and to us. Yeah, sure, man. 170, not 160. No, just blame that. It's always my fault. Okay, cool. Alright, and then click on OK. And it's the same for you, Governor. Alright, cool. We've all got Cinema 4D working.
Do I have to do that every time?
No, just once. So here, if I could get your attention to the screen, and of course, hello to everybody on YouTube as well. When you guys are watching it, I'm not popular on the web, but that's kind of okay because I actually Googled my name because I was trying to get something, and I'm the only person. I'm the only person on the internet with my name, the only, which is kind of scary because it means that I can't be a dick online. I can only do it in real life. If I open recent project, so I'm going to discuss Cinema 4D and After Effects because we can, and this is why we're using Cinema 4D and we're not using Maya, is because the two talk together really, really nicely. I actually have here, I'll just go to my Mobius. Does anyone know what a Mobius strip is? Someone said yes?
Oh,
No.
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It's like a ribbon. Eh?
yes, correct. So you can see here, there is a Cinema 4D file. I don't need to render out. I can just put the file in and it reads it, which is very, very cool. Have we got a piece of paper here?
Yeah, I know.
All right.
William, I found that when I install After Effects in my laptop,
Yeah.
I found that there's also some similar 4D file into the. That one, is it the top of that one?
When you get After Effects in your machine, you get the light version of Cinema 4D, which is paper cut, which is kind of quarter powered and not that useful.
Is that like the particle works?
No, that's something else. This is a three-dimensional object. It is very, very thin, but because it's in a physical world, it is actually 3D. It has 4 sides and 2 surfaces. So this is possible. But if I join it, I make a loop. It has 2 sides and 2 edges. Okay, it's still a 3D object. But if I do this, pull it apart, turn it around, I've just made a physical impossibility, because this now only has 1 edge. If I follow all that around, it twists, comes around back to itself. And if I drew a line on this, it only has 1 surface. Physically impossible in the real world, yet I'm holding it. Ooh, magic. Okay, why am I talking about the Mobius? Well, we can see here, and this is a kind of space that we're thinking, that we're working towards. This is the goal of the course. So George, addressing you and your 3D needs, you and I are going to have to take the journey a lot further for studio. But for all of us within this class, if I so the sound's a bit, well, the sound's what it is. I've put onto Moodle a whole bunch of free sound places, royalty free. You just need to log in to them. And this is of course why I have a Gmail account, because once you're getting free things, you're getting spammed every damn week. And at the moment on my Gmail, I have 53,934 unanswered emails. So if you need to contact me, please email me at work, never at Gmail, because it's just the dead letterbox. Okay. So if we look at this form, it's actually a 3-dimensional object. I can't do anything with it here except for see it, and it's got these kind of modernish, Instagram-ish kind of color space, and you can see that why I've been talking about masking and why I've been talking about track maps is that the type comes in and the glow comes into a focus, and then as the object rotates, I'm moving a track matte so that once it all explodes, the type has disappeared. So the first brief for this semester is that we're learning some tools. The second brief is that we're using these tools to create a form of digital presence. Now we have 2 options. Well, there's always a third option, which is you tell me what you're going to do, but there's going to be type parameters because it's only an elective and we only have 150 hours. One option is that for those of us that are working on UX or making an app thing, you can do an animated intro for an app that you've worked on or you are working on. The other option is that there are 2 companies that you can produce a small digital motion graphic motion sequence 4. Again, not using that word animation, although it is animated. 1 is Zuru Toys, and we're going to have a Zoom meeting with them next week, and they're going to talk to us about their brand values and their vision for communication. The second one is an extension of those who were interested in or knew of the Big Street Bikers. So again, there is but it's now a 3D world, and we have artwork to work from. And once again, whoever does the best gets free e-bike hire, which is worth.
Who won the last one?
Tamarin's result was pretty good, pretty damn good. But this time we have an isometric world to look at. Now, before I go any further into this, what do I mean by an isometric world? Well, I'm not going to talk about the brief. I'm obviously obligated as a tutor, and the now where do I go? Assessments, and if I go to brief 1, 30%, there. See that cute little thing there? That's an example of an isometric world. So you'll be building an isometric world for Big Street Bikers, and that will be used on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So again, thinking about your portfolio as a graduate, and someone says, well, what have you done? And you go, well, I worked with this client, and I worked with this client, and I did this thing, and the change it made, because that's what people always would like to know. How many people did it get out to? Did it improve business? Because as I've heard from industry, and I think I said this yesterday, people will invest in you if you can invest in them. And investment means money. We're not just here to eat donuts and drink coffee, we're here to add value. And that's what design is, adding a value to narrative, storytelling, yet again. All right, let me pull the project apart. I have 2 layers of sound, so let's turn those off. And we can see now that there's still things happening. I have a pre-composition, which is the, what's that word again? Which is the 3D element. And I also have the text which appears and disappears, and then I just have a simple grey gradient, and the subtle use of gradient seems to be a graphic pattern at the moment. So inside this composition, if I look at that, okay, no, that is my shape that is driving my words appearance or not.
Is it the alpha in that?
That is what?
Is it the alpha in that?
Yes, it is. Yeah, so you can see here, if I just stretch out my, hang on, looks, yeah, there we go. No, it won't allow me to stretch out my interface any further, but you can see that little guy there. If I go inside my pre-comp, if I double click on that, I had a grey solid which I was working with, and that's been discarded. I have an adjustment layer. So remember how I was saying, well, maybe I didn't, maybe I just thought it. Let's just dismiss that. If I get to the adjustment layer, we see that it starts at a certain point, and that adjustment layer has the shatter effect on it. So if I come to my adjustment layer, we see there is shatter. So that's what's making my form turn into particles. If I turn that off, my form just stays as a form. Let's turn that back on. And then beneath that, I have a file called circletest.c4d. Now, if I double click on that, nothing, okay. I'll go edit, and I will go with edit original. Here it has the shortcut of Command E, so not E for export, but E for edit. And yes, okay, I will, that is a handgun I'm making, not because I like guns, but because there's something I want to talk about, and I'm making an animation about it. And here's how the animation works, is that I have a circle being formed, but again, if I, sorry, oh, that's right, and I'm in a particular view. Let's go to view, cameras. I use this program all the time. It's just that I'm a little bit tired today, and it's affecting my performance.
Is it always fast?
No, it's just because of the projector, and maybe I should restart my machine this week. But normally it doesn't flash, and you can see here that I actually have modeled a Mobius strip, and that's why, you know, there's the brand name, and trying to make a form that looks exactly like that. Let's just undo that camera move. We're gonna undo here. There we go. So we need to discuss how the software works and all those things, and that's what we're just going to briefly introduce today. The interesting thing is that now that I have my scene like this, so I've shifted to another camera and I've changed the view. If I save this file, that I find unusual. Oh, it's because it's a new one. So there's the original. So changing my camera to my perspective camera, finding my object one more time. There it is there. And let's say that I get my camera and I move it around and I save that file. If I come back to After Effects, it updates. I don't need to re-import or anything. So as we know, we can have 3D cameras in After Effects, but the 3D camera works straight into After Effects in this context. In the next couple of weeks, we'll see how we get the two things to work together. So we're not going to make something in After Effects, we're just going to go straight to Cinema 4D. This file is on Moodle, so you can download it, and you can get to it and pull it apart and break it and download again if you want to see how it works if you've really broken it. So are we all in Cinema 4D? You might have a screen popping up saying there's new content to download. Just cancel that at the moment. I will be providing you with a link on how you can get your own copy of Cinema 4D, and you really want to do that this semester, because as you have a @Unitech or my Unitech or whatever it is email address, you get the software for free for 12 months. If you were to buy the software, you'd be spending about $5,000. Yeah, or if you could go the Adobe way and you could just pay for it monthly, which is about $80. Yeah, it's still $80. Back when I was a kid, you could blah 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 with half a thing. So I'm going to make a new file, and what we're looking at the moment is we're understanding this program within the idea of motion graphics, so generating things that are maybe background or maybe, you know, simple logo stuff. I can talk about Polygon Modeling practice, but I also have run that as a class this year, and I recorded every session. So if you just want to get deeper and you're not sick of hearing my voice, then I can provide you a whole bunch of YouTube links. And there is an excellent community out there of really good animators. There's of course YouTube, and there's of course Vimeo. But if you get your student version of the software, you also get a free membership to a thing called Cineversity, which is an online school for learning Cinema 4D.
Wait, so you don't even have to pay for it, you just have to link your current institution with yourself?
The only thing that you have to do is take a photo of your student ID, and you need to upload that. You need to provide them your phone number and your physical address, and that's it. So it's just filling in a form, giving a bit of information, being honest, and it's all yours, which is
halfway through next year.
till halfway through next year. It used to be 500 days for the license, but the world changes and we can't control that. So I'm going to undo a lot of things. So there we go. And if I save that and I come back to After Effects, then it all should be, yeah, and it's working nicely. Putting that to one side. Those of us that have used Maya before, you know you can have one file open at a time. Here in Cinema 4D, you can see that I've also got another file happening, and another file. I'll just close that one and not save that. And I can just open quite a few files, open recent. Recent files, there we go. And I could go back to, oh yeah, that's kind of bird with texture. So here's a pigeon. Who doesn't hate pigeons? I hate pigeons. Sky rats. But that's, oh okay, and it looks like I'm about to drop something on its head as well. Other things recently worked on. George, this might seem familiar to you. There he is. Yes, it does do animation quite nicely, but the legs are going, and I was only doing a little bit. It was something for a class. You got to forgive me. And you can have multiple cameras. So now again, if I look at that camera, you can see that it's a robot. It doesn't have a gender. I haven't quite attached it to that motion path. There's a million things you can do with this. Let's just close that. No. Let's just close that. No. So what we're going to do, no, and I might as well close that.
Can you do like how SolidWorks, you can have an image reference?
Yep, absolutely. It does everything all other software does, and it's got a few little bits extra. It's a bit easier to use. It doesn't freak folks out as much, but has anyone here got the latest iPad Pro? All right, well, you've just saved yourself from being robbed or mugged. Anyone here got an iPhone 11? No? Oh, you do? Excellent. Well, I promise not to beat you up for your phone afterwards. But your phone, it has 3 lenses and then a little clear thing, right? That clear thing is called a LiDAR, which is a low intensity direction range finding, which means no, it's also in the iPhone 11 Pro, or as soon as a phone costs more than $600, I'm going to go start looking somewhere else. But if you have one of those, if you have the latest iPhone, what you can do is you can motion capture. So that means you could get someone doing a goofy walk or what have you, and you can get that data and put it straight into, Cinema 4D. And that means that your abilities for, what's it called? Augmented reality is absolutely fantastic. But
can you get a LiDAR on different things?
Cinema 4D is only working with those two products at the moment. But motion capture in itself, the industry has gone from people wearing these kind of rubbery suits that are covered in sensors to just a room filled with LiDAR cameras, and it can sort the data. That used to cost around somewhere between $200,000 and $20,000 to set up. But now we've moved a couple of decimal points, and now it's only costing, how much is one of those phones? $2,000? I find it kind of crazy, but it does have a great trick to it. If you get your mouse and hold down the Option key and left mouse click and drag, you'll see that you're moving your camera around, right? Everyone got that? If you get your middle mouse button and you click and drag, you should be moving around in a kind of parallel motion. So instead of revolving around an object, you can move forward and back. Is everyone getting that? If you middle mouse button click on the screen, you go from a single view to 4 views. So so that's called dollying around the space. So the first one was rotate. The second one is dolly. And then if you hold down the Option key and you use the right mouse button, you zoom in and out. Middle mouse button, click and drag. Now, those of us that are using a laptop, which is only you, buddy, you just need to pinch the screen, the touchpad. There we go, I zoomed in too much. So that's how we navigate space, right? Let's add an object. So you see up here, no, not on your screen, it's my screen. You see up here, there's this thing that looks like a cube. It makes cubes. I know. If I click and hold, there's a whole bunch of other primitive objects. So if I zoom up here, you see that any button that has one of those little black triangles at the bottom right corner means that there's more tools in there. So let's make a sphere. Let's all do that. Okay. It's okay if you've made a cube. Yeah, there is. And you can adjust that as well. And you'll see that if you did click and hold on that cube menu, there's a whole bunch of little primitive forms that we can make, and they are good things. You can make a bunch if you want. In fact, let's try that. Let's also make a cube and a cone and a torus. Alright, so everything is now all in a pile, all in top or inside or intersecting each other. When we create things, they go to a place called the origin, which is the beginning, which has some coordinates. We know about, and if we're ever using GPS, sometimes we get a whole bunch of numbers. That's coordinates in space, two-dimensional coordinates, because we only exist on the surface, like fleas on a planet. But what I am drawing your attention to is that here we have a torus, a cone, a cube, and a sphere, so that as we create things in this program, we get this objects view, which allows me to pick my things. So that means that if I want to place them all out so I can see them as individual elements, I just need to click on torus, and then I'm going to the move button. Now, once I've chosen once I select any 3D object, and it's all 3D, I have these three arrows. These have definite meanings to space. When we talk about transmissive color, what color space is it? Not reflected color. In English, what's the opposite of CMYK? Do we ever say it any other way? Do we all ever call it BGR or GBR? No, it's always RGB. That's the order. That's the order. Here, there is an order. Moving things up and down, so my phone is coming up in space, that is the which coordinate? Yeah, it's the y coordinate, it's going up. If I'm moving things, if we're thinking about a two-dimensional, what are those things called? Graph, what's sliding along called? Left and right? X. And if I'm moving something deep into space,
Z.
Yeah, that's okay. So we've got RGB. Do we ever call it the YXZ coordinates? Which way do we call that? That's the way it's said. R is left and right. Hang on. Up and down is G. R, G, B. X, Y, Z. They map perfectly onto each other. So we're going to move things along in the X parameter, the X coordinate. So that means I'm getting torus, and I might pull that over there. I'm going to get cone, and I'm going to pull that along. Oh, hang on, wait a minute. I'm out of my view now. This is why the first thing I showed you is how to navigate about in space. There we go. And I'm going to get cube, and it doesn't matter what order you put them in. And there we go. There's four things in a row. Please do that. And then I'll give you guys a minute. Why is it always the most interesting stuff at the end of a lesson? Is it deliberate? Does it make you want to use the tools more after the old man is gone? Okay, cool. And I think we're getting close to making the logo for Activision, who were an old games company. I think it's them. They what? They made Tony Hawk. Awesome. I haven't met Tony Hawk, but I've built a ramp for him.
Really?
Yeah.
In collaboration with?
Do you guys ever hear of a thing called the Big Day Out?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I did for them was build their skateboard ramps. So now, and here's the really semi-frustrating thing about the software, or well, not frustrating, but here is where the software is unique. If I have my pointer over here and I rotate my camera, so I'm holding down the option key and left mouse clicking, okay, well that's kind of behaving itself. In fact, my camera's just rotating about the center. But if I've got something way over there, I want to not be rotating on the center of the object, and I've lost my view of everything. How do I get back? Well, if I select the object that I'm looking for, you notice that there's this nice little arrow that says, hey, it's over there. If I click on that arrow, oh, there it is. That's handy. But I could also, let's say that I'm going to get myself lost. I could also select an object, and I want to press the O key on the keyboard and think of it as, oh, there it is. Yeah, or okay, I've found it. But here's the thing that I'm trying to get to. If I have my pointer on an object and I hold down the Option key and I click and drag, I rotate around that object. I rotate around my thing that I am partially selecting. Yeah?
Wait, do you have to select it on the top now?
No, you don't need to select it. You just need to... You see how when I hover over an object, it gets a highlight around it? Can you guys see that? There's a little halo.
But when I hover, there's no halo. Am I in a different workspace?
Maybe I've been monkeying around with the settings on my computer. We're all in the same workspace, but yeah, so take your mouse over the cone and click and rotate now. No, you don't need to select it, you just need to hold down the Option key. No, see how your pointer wasn't on the cone. Put your pointer over the cone and now rotate. See how you rotate around that object instead of rotating. Okay, stop.
I see, it's the cross thing. So if that
Yeah.
cross thing is on your object. then
Yes,
it's
yes. So I'm rotating about the cone. It's a little detail, but who knows the working on the computer late at night feeling? That's when it gets important. If I have an object that I don't like anymore, I can just select it and press the delete key, and it's gone. Now, you guys don't need to do this, but here's where things get fun. If I zoom up on this object, this looks like it's made out of little wee squares. It's very, very close to a polygon object, but it has a subtle difference. Has anyone here done any polygon modeling before? I know you have, Cynthia. Anyone else? Okay. What polygon modeling means, it's a bit like digital clay in that this mesh, it's made up of three main components. It's made up of lines. We can see those lines. And where those lines intersect, they're called points, or sometimes known as controlled vertices, or CVs. And then what these four lines define is a thing called a face, or a poly, or a polygon. So I could grab a polygon and stretch it out. I could grab an edge and make a crease in things. I can create I can get points and I can move them around. So still trying to capture your attention. If I go to my recent files about the bird with texture, if we look at this awkward looking duck, and I change my, if I just go to line based, no, I won't do that. I will just go to Gouraud shading with lines. We can see here that these squares kind of, they transit around and they're all different sizes. So this is what polygon modeling is about. You start with a cube and you make some cuts and you build and you move and you build and you move and you build and you move. It's like a very complicated version of Minecraft. And Minecraft is a great way to understand computer modeling. Let's get rid of that. No. But at the moment, this isn't a polygon. I have to convert this into a polygon, but before I convert it, I have a few advantages. At the moment, this is a parametric object. So I myself am a parametric object. I have functions, I have variables, I have data you can read off me, and I do all these other computational things. I'm also a human, but it's not that important. One of my parameters is a thing called age, and it's only traveling in one thing, but with these things we can change the parameters forward and back. They're quite flexible. Where we see those is that if I select an object, we have the list of objects, and then we have the parameters of that object. So the basic is just the way that it appears on the wall or screen. I'll do this via what you guys will be watching at home later on. So here it is. If I make it X-ray, I can see through it. It doesn't change it at rendering time, but if I'm putting things inside it, or if it's I'm modeling a room and an interior, I might want to just make the walls X-ray or hide them, because you can have layers. It has the same form of thinking as Photoshop. But coordinates means where it is in the world. So I've actually moved this along 541 centimeters from the origin, from that place where it first came into the program. And so resetting values, we often just type in zeros and it gets it back to the center of the world. If I've been stretching it really out of the way, out of a strange proportion, I can make all that 1, and it's just the way it was made. HBP is another mathematical way to discuss rotation. So if I get these, we can see that it spins around. Excellent. That it's shifting about, it's rotating about the X. Why they don't call it XYZ? This software is made by Germans, and they have a very precise idea of precision. And that rotates it the other way. So it is in three-dimensional space in its own kind of world. That's easy. Object. This is where things get fun. I can get my ring and say that it's bigger with a smaller, it's now a bracelet, or it's the edge of a blow-up swimming pool, or it's some kind of weird thing. Move that around. It has a number of segments, so I can make it look like something simple or something very, very smooth. And as I increase the number of patches, see this button here? It allows me to render the object, and that was pretty damn quick. Now, this isn't always the case, and that's why I dropped $2,500 on a video card on my new machine. But it was a video card with 4,000 GPU cores on it, because you can render through your computer's CPU, or you can render off your GPU, and one is faster than the other. We can see that, okay, I'll bring those, oh yeah, and it's one way to make a triangle or a beveled kind of square. I'll bring the resolution down on those components, and now when I render, I've got that kind of low poly look to it. Once again, I draw your attention to here. Look at those trees. That's how I do that. It's one of the ways you can do it. Orientation. It is oriented around the plus Y. So that means if I orientate it around the X plane, it's up on its side. And if I rotate it around the Z plane, it's going to snap around the other way, like that. So I could make a thing twisted up and twisted across. But here the program's a little bit smarter. It's a lot of information I'm giving you, and don't punish yourself by going, there's a lot for us to quietly walk through. I'll just undo all of that. But we also have slice. So instead of it being a whole torus, I can say that I'm having that much of it. So if we think about motion graphics and what I've been saying today, we're adding narrative value to data. So suddenly this could become some kind of bizarre form of pie chart, because what if I got this torus and I duplicated that, and this one is exactly the same size in the same place, but if I could make that one a bit bigger, come to its object, and I'm going to get its pipe radius a little bit smaller, and I could both of them are hideously low res, and I'd be, but I'm just trying to show you guys the flexibility here. Let's get that pipe radius a little bit smaller, and again coming to the slice tab and saying that, well, that, it's another way to discuss, don't do that, to discuss certain proportions of data. Now let's get all those three things, because I don't need to do things one at a time. I can get the object. Now here the radius has multiple values, but it's really the ring set. You son of a, what did you just do then? No, my computer, this is a new Mac from this year, and it cost the school, I don't own it, but they rent it for me, $5,500, and I would get 2 Microsoft Surface laptops that would be better for that same amount of money. There we go. So back to where I was. So coming to here, I'm going to change my number of ring segments to 64 and my number of pipe segments to 64. Okay, that's nice and smooth, but you can see in terms of discussing information, it's, we can use this for motion graphics, we can use this for, what's that thing called, animation, but on this little button, and we'll come back to every button more than once, when it comes to rendering, making pixels, I also have the chance to change the number of pixels per square inch. So I can make it 300 dpi and I can use it for print.
So that's why I saw some of the poster people using really kind of 3D option, but just a poster.
Yep.
Just somewhere like art
Yep.
show, somewhere like
Yep. Yep.
They do like that.
Who's been to the Designers Institute website recently? No one? Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll show you my email. Why do you want to see my email? I don't want to see my email. But if I don't read it, please, if I type in DINS, no, Designers Institute New Zealand. Oh, don't be. I bet luck is let's go from designers. No. I find this always, yes. We're starting to see this in our emails, right? And we're starting to see this in types of motion-based posters. This is Cinema 4D. This is why I'm showing you it, because it's kind of easy to do these weird things, and people go, oh, who's seen those animations on YouTube called, what is it, vaguely amusing or satisfying animations? Do you guys know what I mean? Satisfying animations.
Can you keyframe and see what's happening?
Oh yeah.
That's how you do
Yeah. This is what I do. No, it isn't. Skip ad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Got a lot of like that.
Yeah. That's Cinema 4D. Oh, I haven't seen the human teeth one yet.
It's so weird.
But we can achieve this in this course if we want it. Sport. Oh, not that. That's what you're spending 800 or 900 euros on getting these particle systems. But oh yeah, see that's the one that I just bought, which I don't. I'll show you an example of my latest animation experiment. If we go to my library, oh my god, there's going to be a video of my videos. But here's what this is the last time I had spare time. So that's looking at how fluid dynamics can work in Cinema 4D. And of course, just having a little bit of a geek out on getting really nice syrupy renders. Enough of that. Thank you, everybody. Let's come back to Cinema 4D. So that's some basics, right? How did I do that ring building itself? Well, to answer your question, Christian, if I get the torus, we see that there is this in the slice option. So if I get all of those, just like in After Effects, I could say that on frame number 30, the 2 value, that little button there, keyframe. If I come back to maybe frame number 10, and again I always like giving myself a little bit of headroom so that there's no animation ever starting on frame number 0, that I have the ability of when I'm assembling things that I can cut a bit finer. You know, it's like working with a piece of wood. We never cut it exactly to the line unless the blade is perfect. We leave a little bit and we smooth it off. But if I come here and I set the multiple values all to 0 and set a keyframe. So let's get that to play.
You said that it's in frames, right?
Yep.
So if you have like, if you wanted to sync it up with your After Effects, you have like 1 second, you have 60 frames, right? 60 frames, 1 second, right?
It's a really good question, and that introduces us to a thing that I never mentioned at the beginning of talking about this, which is the project settings, because we need things on an equal level for it to work nicely for us. What's our frame rate in New Zealand? That's right. So if I come to Command and D, I get to my project settings, and the frames per second here is 30. Why would it be 30 frames per second? What runs at 30 frames per second, roughly? Do we know?
You said Command D.
Yeah, Command D. D for, details. D for details, project details. 30 frames per second is roughly internet animation speed. We know that with gaming, we want to hit 60. Why do we want to hit 60 frames per second?
Smooth.
Yeah. Why is it smooth for our eyes?
Because for game in real time, and they'll have the motion blur.
Yeah. the reason why things gravitate towards this golden number of 60 frames per second, that's the frame rate of our brain. So if things are moving faster than that, that's why they blur, because our brain can't keep up with that. If you've ever seen any film or you've driven past a car that has spoked mags, and sometimes it looks like the wheels rotating backwards, it's because it's not syncing with our internal frame rate properly. Being in front of a strobe light, how things start to jerk along. Or if you've been awake for too long and suddenly everything's breaking up a bit, the brain's slowly shutting itself down and cutting some of the power to the processor. So I have my frames per second, and also I can, through these tabs, set the size, the resolution of my project, but these are details. What we're going to do is we're going to generate a generative shape. So, you've seen that, you see it, it's gone. Delete everything in your scene, please. Oh man, we're out of time. Okay. That's pretty good. We actually finished at 12 because we started at 9, but I'll give you guys an extra 15 minutes. Is everyone okay with that? Yeah? All right. We're not going to generate an object this time. We're going to generate a curve, which in this program is called a spline. So you see that tool there, that pen tool? If you click and hold, I want you to make a circle. And let's just keep with the size that it is. But again, you can see in the Object tab, in the Properties area, we have this thing called Radius. So we can get the radius and we can make it larger if we so decide. And you see that there are the radio buttons to the left, so that can be animated, but not right now, please. If I turn on ring, it gets a thing inside it, so that's how I could make pipes, but I'm not going to. If I say it's an ellipse, then I control the width and the height independently, but I'm not going to. We're just keeping with that. So that's step 1. Step 2 is we're going to go to the same tool again, and we're going to generate a rectangle. And you can see that you can make cogwheels and stars and texts and flowers, but we're not doing that. We're just going to go to a rectangle. So I create one of those. I don't know why that just happened. I'll do that again. Rectangle. Okay, so now we're going to edit the rectangle, and I'm going to make it, let's say, 20 by 20 centimeters, so it's quite small. And I'm going to get its plane, because it's a two-dimensional object, it's going to be on ZX, which means I'm folding it down.
Wait, what?
Oh, did I say ZX? Yeah. XZ. Order, yes. Thank you. Point to you, sir. So we got that. We're all good with that? Yeah? Okay, so we can get shapes by producing primitives. Big deal. We can get shapes by getting our primitives and turning them into polygons and then modeling away, which is awesome. But there's a third way. We can get shapes by having generative relationships, algorithms. That means we need to look at some of these green boxes here. And we're looking at not extrude, but we're looking at sweep. So click and hold on sweep. And well, click and hold on that and then come down to sweep. And we now have a green wormy thing and nothing has happened. And the reason why that is that these green things here, they need inputs. So you need to plug something into it for it to work. What I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to plug into it, and if you get it wrong, you just change the order, is that this idea of plugging in is a lot like the idea in After Effects of parenting. So I can't use the whiteboard because I've only got a permanent marker, so you're going to see this on my hand for the next week. Is that if I grab the rectangle, that's the profile I want of my sweep. So that means if I get my sweep and I chop it, if we've got a piece of bendy licorice, if we cut it in half, we get to see a circle. Or a piece of a noodle, for example. So that's the cross section. I plug that into the sweep, and all that I'm doing is I'm getting my left mouse button and I'm clicking and dragging into sweep.
What's the arrow now?
The arrow has to be pointing down. So that means that I wish I had my Freddy Krueger arms with me. You guys have seen Nightmare on Elm Street? Yeah. Such a cool film. I saw it when I was 16 and the whole cinema screamed. It was amazing. First film with Johnny Depp in it too. So that is parented inside there. That has to look like that. I then get the circle and I do the same thing, but the circle is the path. So we've got, for a sweep, we need a profile and a path. We need the shape of the cross section and the direction that the cross section takes. So if I get this and I drop it into the sweep, it's turned into a shape, but it's turned into the wrong shape. I get this backwards almost every time. It's not that I'm not a professional, it's just that my head was not installed properly. So I'm going to get rectangle and I'm just going to reverse that connection. So again, I'm dragging it onto sweep and then suddenly I get something starting to behave itself. It's working in a semi-weird way. But now I just need to pick at the little details, and it could be that the detail that I'm looking at here is maybe it was on the wrong plane. I got it on the right plane for having it aligning the way that I'm visualizing it in my head, but if I look at what's going on now, I've made that kind of shape, which is this square being extruded along, swept along that curve. Now, there's another way that I could have done it. I could have made a pipe and then just extruded that out, but the trick is I'm using a sweep because if I come to the sweep object, I have more parameters. So first of all, I have start growth, I have end growth, and you can see that in the version that we looked at, it grew from both ends at the same time. This is one of the reasons why I'm using sweep, so I'll just undo those two things. And we have this thing here called end rotation. Coming back to the Mobius, the way that I made the two-dimensional object, the three-dimensional object, a single-dimensional object, is by twisting it 180 degrees. So if I come here to end rotation, 180. And that is not quite working the way that I remember it, but let's turn on parallel movement. No. It might be my isopalm divisions, or it might be that I need a 90-degree rotation, and that's starting to behave itself, although my isopalm division is looking very low res. So I might take that up to 128. That isn't it. Let's just undo that. Constant cross section is turned on. 2 rail. That's all looking good. No, don't need to worry about that. The other thing that's probably starting to, if we're thinking about how the input of the rectangle has a relationship to the making of the form, it's also the input of the circle which is driving my number of divisions here. So if I say that instead of there being 8 intermediate points in my circle, if I bring that up to 64, we see that now, whoops, don't do that. We see that now we're getting a much smoother shape. Why it's not joining up properly, I might have to come back to my sweep. I certainly want banking, parallel movement, constant cross section. Well, luckily I have the original file I made ages ago when I was getting this thing called Sleep. Let's look at that sweep there. Start growth, end scale. My end rotation is actually set to 0. So how did I twist it? Is it because on my rectangle I have rotation? No. Alright, I'm going to have to pull this apart, and this is usually where things get, where I need to wander off and blame myself horribly for not being absolutely perfect. So I'm going to get my end rotation. That will be some of the reason, because of its orientation in space first. So let's get that end rotation back to 0. And how'd you do it, you monkey? Well, it's escaping me at the moment. Regardless, we have covered something quite fundamental to the software, that we can generate shapes very well with these generators. We have quite a few of them, and I'm going to go through those next week when we're looking at a little bit of isometric building, and then I will have the answer to this. But the interesting part now with our sweep is, why not try setting keyframes for your end rotation and your start rotation. We also see that we have not end scale, not end rotation, but start growth and end growth. We also see we have this thing called end scale, which I can get that, and I can set different numbers as well, so that it can come to a point. Is it because I think I can, if I come to, no, thank God for that. If I come to the details, it's always about the details. And you'll notice this. Let me just creep this up a bit. We see here we have details for scale and for rotations. So that means, okay, I've got someone waiting for me in my office. If I double click here, or is it command click? If I command click, I can add points, and so that I can have variability. So reading this graph, this is the whole rotation of the object, and then along that object, I'll just text Alan. Okay, there and 5. That means along the whole object I can have undulating width. There we go. You can see that happening right here. Whoops, undo that. You can see that the width is changing quite nicely around there.
How did you draw the box?
I double clicked on the line while holding the command key. So here with my rotation, all that I need to do is at the beginning I rotate this way, and at the end I rotate that way. And there you can stop doing that. The way that I'm always getting this double thing is that if you have any object and you command click and drag, you duplicate it. That also means, see up here, that's position. If I come here to rotation, I can, spin it about the y-axis, because that's the green line. But if I hold down command and I do it, I can easily make duplicates as many times as I want. So if you want to start making the next logo for the CIA, well, this is one way to think about it. There we go. But let's not do that. Yeah, pretty much. I'd agree with that, especially what they did to South America over the period of about 75 years. But we can talk politics another time. Sweep, rotation, just going from a value of 0 to 1, X and Y. And of course, you see that these curves have handles to them, so I can define where the rotation happens. And you will notice that these curves can be animated. So that means at one point of time I can set that, and then at another I can get my handle, and let's just muck around with that. So you can see that it's just all bunching up in one area. When I press that radio button, the button went red. Now it's gone orange. It's telling me that there's change that hasn't been recorded. So I'll click on it again, and there's my recorded keyframe. If I rewind and play that, check that out. Yeah. So everything we've been doing in motion graphics as a 2D practice now suddenly has a 3-dimensional world to it. And that's the end of the class. You don't have to do anything with this. You can save it if you want. You can sit in the lab if you want. You can send me an email and say, okay, how do I get the license really? And I'll send you some information. And really? you can really get it. No, the real version. I'm not going to deal in cracked software. It's developers deserve to be paid. And what you are working on during the week, this is the important part, is getting that semantic animation finished. Crack, snap, smash. What was the other one? Fold. So that's all on Moodle. Andrew, do you want me to sign you up for Moodle so you can access? Yeah, and I'll do the same for you, Felix. I have someone waiting for me in my office. One last thing I should do is, oh no, I think I just killed our recording. Yep.
Why can't I close the program? Every time I click the close button.
Oh, you got to go up to quit. Yeah, I just killed the whole screen recording. Oh no, I didn't. What's the program doing to me? Let's go stop.